Walking through tonight's NBA slate. Hopefully, you guys can jump on in and get in when you can. And we'll talk through what I like, and then we'll go through questions. As you guys know, I like to keep these shows interactive, so I love to go back and forth with you guys. You know, I also can sometimes speak in a way that maybe is not the nicest way, but it's just how my brain goes. Like, I'm not necessarily criticizing it. I'm just like, no, I would never do that. I don't. But I'm like telling myself at the same time, so sorry about that if I do that. But I'm going to do it. I like to go rapid fire, and I like to go back and forth, and I want to hear some of your takes as well as giving you mine. Let's get it tonight. Let's crush. It's going to be a weird slate because we have a giant break between the early games, which is kind of nice actually, because we should know most of the information that we're waiting on, and we just got a bunch more over the last period of time. Obviously, I loved Fred VanVleet today, and I'm turning him into two other Raptors in a lot of my that's sort of the way I'm going. So let's talk. I'll talk through my plays, and then let's get your guys' ideas, what you want to do, what you want to know, and we'll talk through it. I'm going to get my lineups right now to give you guys some exact exposures. Before I get to my exact exposures, guys, I'd like to get more of. I'd still like to get more of the Raptors mixed in, including guys like Gary Trent. I do have 20% of Gary Trent right now on DraftKings. I don't have him on FanDuel, and I'm not playing a ton of lineups, but my big lineups, I could switch over to Gary Trent. I obviously will do so if we lose Scotty Barnes, who is currently questionable, which is a nerve-wracking one because Scotty Barnes was about to be the best play of the day, or one of them. I want to get to a little bit of Zubac with Morris out. I think that's actually a reasonable play with at his price, just in terms of searching for a ceiling and low ownership. So I kind of like that. Also, there's other good centers that are going to take up so much of the ownership. And, he could outscore Hernangomez, even if Hernangomez has a good game plan. Hernangomez could put up 30. He's 50 to 200. He could put up 40. There's a lot of ways around it. It changes your build. I like that. These are not my favorite plays. Again, these are guys I want to get more of. Patty Mills, another one who just the matchup, I just can't get past it with the Lakers, that he should be able to go wild. But, look, I mean, he's a shooting reliant player, but he will be on the court a bunch. He does have small forward eligibility, most importantly. If Bruce Brown is starting, although I don't see that as being the most likely case, I would consider taking a shot on Bruce Brown as well. That's pretty much it for the guys who I'm currently trying to get more of until, of course, we see the starting lineups. And if we ask questions about certain things, you could ask me one guy versus one guy. But the truth is, until I get the starting lineup for we need a confirmation on Scotty Barnes, and especially we need the starting lineup for the Pels, it's going to be really hard to just speculate and go, okay, here's the guy you have to have when we're still just trying to figure it out ourselves. I will say that of the Pels, the guy who I have the least exposure to is Gary Clark, of the viable guys. And I'm very concerned about this Jackson Hayes situation with the legal stuff. He should play, but I want to make sure what's happening. And I'm very confused. I don't know who's going to start. If he's in the starting lineup, obviously that makes it easier for us. But I am confused about this one. I'm a little conflicted, and I would encourage, what I'm going to do when I get off here is do a little bit of digging on Twitter to see if there's any chance that there's some way he sits also. Because if he does, it's a pretty big deal. And we just got news that De'Aaron Fox and Metu are out, which is going to put back in play. Shoot, it's kind of unfortunate because I was loving my McCollum play as I was going to get to my ownerships. And I'm probably going to have to convert some of that over to some Halliburton at this point. But I don't see anybody else who I say you must, unless Davion Mitchell's in the starting lineup, which, again, we may not know until after most of the games lock. So I am going to add Halliburton to my list, and I will get to him after the show. My current ownerships are as follows. Now, they're going to change, so please don't take this as gospel. Look, even that little bit of news is going to change a lot of things. And I build my shell lineups, and then I adjusted, and I made some pivots, but I didn't go crazy with the pivots. I have 45% Patrick Beverley, 25% Anunoby, although that's likely going to be closer to 50. 44% Siakam, that's likely going to be closer to 60 or 70. 45% Nickeil Alexander-Walker, 40% Hernangomez, 60% Hayes at the moment. I actually like Hernangomez better on DraftKings. I'll get to FanDuel in a minute. But it's 4,700 versus 3,100. And like I said, once you get to the Hernangomez at that price, you can sort of make an argument for a pivot like a Zubac, which is something that I'm looking at doing a little bit of. I have 45% Scotty Barnes right now. That was going to be 70%, but I'm still waiting to see what happens with him. I have a ton of Scotty Barnes on FanDuel, which I'll get to in a minute. He should run the point basically, but it just had multiple ways to get there in a great matchup. It's just, I don't care that it's the first game. Most of the news that we're waiting for, I think we're finding out. I love McCollum. I have him at 60% right now. That's going to lessen with playing a little more Halliburton. I was going to take a shot because I had a kind of a chalkier build. So I have I have in one of my main cores, and I kind of wanted to take the shot on Edwards. I prefer playing Russell, but the problem is the price gap. But I like this matchup a lot for both sides there, so I really want to get some exposure to both sides, especially McCollum though. He's the priority one. I don't mind if you want to play Cat as well. The center's loaded. I did get to 40% Jokic right now. I have 70% Harden. That could obviously change. That obviously will change. It's probably not going to be that high for Jokic. It may still stay that high for Harden. I'm playing 3 big lineups on FanDuel. Here are my ownerships over there. I'm sure there's other guys. Herbert Jones, I have 50%. That's too high. I want to be closer to 25. Satoransky, I mentioned I have a huge percentage of. I'm going to be lower on him and probably even mix in silliness like Gary Clark and things like that. Just to get some different exposure to that game. I also think you could make a very easy pivot to a guy like what's his name instead of him, who I don't think gets as much of a boost, Temple, because he's not high usage, but he's high usage enough and he should play minutes. It's just that they get blown out, which I think is a very real possibility. You're more likely to see Satoransky out there later in the game, and so that's why I'm sort of siding with it that way. But certainly, some room left to change there. Some other stuff over here. I'm seeing if I missed anything of my main builds. I don't think I did. So I'll go over to FanDuel and then we'll get questions and we'll get comments back and forth and talk about this stuff. I did force Luka into a lineup on FanDuel. I don't think that you need to. It's too expensive. He's going to be 0 owned, and if I play him with Harden and they outscore all the other guards by 20 points, which is completely on the table, then I'm going to at least feel good about the way I built. Of my 3 big lineups, I have 2 Hernan Gomez's and 1 Jackson Hayes. Of my 3 big lineups, I have 2 Scotty Barnes, 2 Anunobys, and 2 Siakams. So matching those guys together. I have LaMelo Ball in one of my 3. I have Alvarado and Satoransky each in one of my 3. And I have I have Alvarado in 2 of my 3, Satoransky in 1. And I have Nickeil Alexander in 2 out of my 3, but he's also going to he could end up being on the 3rd one as well. It's just sort of going back and forth on that one right now. Other guys I like, DeJounte Murray is another spend up that is just in an awesome matchup. I will get to some Christian Wood to counter my DeJounte Murray in that game. Should it stay close, you get the back and forth with those two. You could be looking at like 120 fantasy points between those 2 guys, and that certainly sounds good with the value we have out there. I have McCollum in 1 out of my 3. I have Porter in 1 out of my 3. I mentioned that I do like both sides of that game. Too much Edwards, but his price makes him more tempting over there. And I actually have him in one of my main lineups on DraftKings, but I have him in 2 out of my 3 right now at 6,700. That's going to turn into a little bit of the Toronto guys. It's just I need to know what's happening with Scotty Barnes before I decide. I have Jokic at center in one of my 3 on FanDuel and one of my 2 on DraftKings. And that's basically a rundown of my main guys to play. So let's talk about what's happening. I just went through all my strategy, guys. So no reason to come in and say what's my strategy. Hopefully that question was way before because I just went through everything I'm doing as of right now. Let's see. Precious in the mix for Toronto. Yeah, I did throw Precious into a couple lineups. He's played a lot of minutes in these situations, but that could become a weird, sneaky Boucher play if we lose Scotty Barnes. So keep that on mind. Precious is fine on FanDuel as well. I don't think it's like you must get to him, but I do have him in one of my 3. I forgot to mention that. And the one I have him in, I am, running him. It happens to be in one where I'm playing Barnes and Siakam at the moment with Ball on the other side to give you an idea of what's up with that. What's up, Sensei J? What's up, Adam? At K9 Bronco Dunbar's out there. We got I got all the news, guys. So what are you doing? What questions do you have? How can we make best use of these next 10 to 15 minutes? And what can we do to get this figured out? I don't think Precious needs Barnes to be out, by the way, to be viable. I think he's viable anyway. If Barnes is out, he becomes an even better play. Keldon Johnson is a guy who I had on my radar to start the day. It's really hard to justify against some of the other plays. Both Keldon Johnson, DeJounte Murray are really good plays. I'm sorry, DeJounte is also. But Keldon Johnson, Derek White, really good plays that I am not getting to as much as I thought because I could play, different positions a little bit, but I get Gary Trent and, one of the Toronto, whether it's Anunoby or Scotty Barnes that just make it a little bit more interesting. So that answers that one. Another long shot play that I'm not getting. I mean, there's a lot. This whole San Antonio side, I could make a bunch of arguments, but that's even more of a reason why I don't want to get too crazily involved, because you have so many bodies. Like, I mean, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 8 guys expected to play 24 or more minutes. That is a really scary situation. The guy who I do side with the most of the San Antonio side on DraftKings is Podol. I think there's a massive ceiling for Podol potentially. Christian Wood is everybody who thinks Christian Wood's good at basketball is wrong. He's not a good basketball player. He's not a winning player. He makes your team worse, but he puts up fantasy numbers and he gives up plenty on the other side. So I love Podol. Hopefully he doesn't get in foul trouble. But if he's been running out there, he's been just crushing, and he feels like a better play to me than just a stronger position than Derek White or Keldon Johnson or Devin Vassell or Lonnie Walker or Doug McDermott or any of the other guys who you want to mix into the builds. But if I was scripting, and again, and I say that a lot, but I think it's important to know where it's coming from. So I think all of those guys are viable plays. I just don't think that I'm going to end up doing that hand building, because I think there are better options out there that are actually getting basically similar ownership as of right now. Kelly Oubre did not cross my mind for 1 second today. There is no reason why they would start him. They just don't ever do that unless they've been really shorthanded. It'd be Cody Martin. And the truth is, when he was thriving, they were missing like 3 of these other starters as well. It wasn't just him. So Kelly Oubre is a guy I have as one of the lowest point per dollar plays in that game. And sure, can he get hot and do something? No reason to play Kelly Oubre at all, in my opinion. You're just being weird for the sake of being weird if you make that play. So I'm not going to do it. Favorite FanDuel centers. I like Zubac a little bit as the one I didn't mention, but I mentioned all of my centers. Wood, Hernan Gomez, depending on which you're using. I like Achua. You can use my power forward. Hernan Gomez, Jackson Hayes, Jokic. Those are the guys who I'm using. So nobody else for me that I am interested in, except for I do like Zubac, and I just haven't gotten to him yet. Okay, let's see. Anything else? Keep popping them in, guys. We love to keep going, but there's no back and forth I can do with anybody because I'm doing this show solo. So we can get to a lot, but we need to get all the questions out there. And I don't mind if I'm not trying to criticize when I say I hate a play. That's just me. That's just my thought. That's how I am. I'm blunt. I'm not trying to criticize any individual while I'm doing that. Ooh, what did I just do here? I ended up, I think I have a little too much Jackson Hayes, which maybe there's no such thing, but I think there is. I don't think this is any sort of an absolute stone cold lock of any kind. I think it's a lock that 3 guys from New Orleans crush their value. I think it's likely that 5 do. And I think it's possible that more do, but I am not going to play based on that. Just strategy. It's not going to be like the way I'm going to attack this slate in general. I am going to try and squeeze a little bit of Keldon Johnson into some of my lineups. I just think it makes a little too much sense. And again, I think I'm a little lighter on Garrett Temple than I initially planned to be. So I would like to change a little bit of that. Even though I don't love this thing for Temple, I was interested in noticing that he had like a few 20% usages. So if the game stays close, I think he actually is maybe like he's not as good of a play as the numbers would have made. Oh, I'm going to play Garrett Temple tonight, but he actually could end up being that good of a play. It's just on a different slate, we'd be all over him. There's just too much value in that same game, and it's really hard to justify for me anyway. All right, what else have we got here? Let's see. Nurkic, I have 0 Nurkic tonight. That's Sheets' thing. Go ahead. Everybody can go ahead and do it. The odds of him being the best scoring player in that price range, I feel like is fairly low enough. I think he's actually going to have some ownership too. And I like the matchup. I like to attack Cat. I would much rather play CJ McCollum at 1,000 cheaper than Nurkic. I think the median score is higher. And I think while Nurkic might get to 60 more often, I think that CJ gets to 50 at least as often, if not more often. And again, you're taking up a center spot. So I don't want to play all over all these guys. Like I think Nurkic is a very similar play to Podol in just raw numbers. And Nurkic is costs 2,000 more. So I am not getting to Nurkic. I commend anybody who does it. It's completely a good tournament play. I'm not going to say it's not. It's not something I'm doing. It's not something I'm a fan of. Just because a guy, it feels a little like I always was the guy who was playing Nurkic because he's usually 0% owned at 6K and all this stuff, and he's got a ceiling. But to chase a couple of 60 fantasy point games feels a little thin as they get healthier. And he also has plenty of 30s out there that he's going to put up here. And I have no fear in fading him. If he scores 60, so be it. I have plenty of other guys on my roster who could do the same. If the game stays close, Harrison Barnes maybe get 40 minutes. I have zero interest in Harrison Barnes. Let me take that one back. I could not find. No, you know what? On DraftKings, there is no way I could find. You couldn't pay me to play Harrison Barnes tonight. I would say that. You're talking about a guy who just had a ceiling game of 42 and was on fire, and he's 6,200. I have a bunch of guys like that who are 4,200 today. So why would I need Harrison Barnes? So I don't. So for me, completely inviable. Does he get there? Sure. Sometimes he's going to get there in this spot. Definitely don't like the play though, in my opinion. Scotty Barnes is starting, but he's questionable. They announced after he was starting, Carnes, in case you missed it, they announced he was starting, and then they announced that he was questionable. So there is that midday downgrade that can sometimes get you. So it makes me a little bit nervous. That's where I'm at anyway. I don't have anything else, any other way to put it than that, I am all over Scotty Barnes, and if he's out, I'm gonna be all over the rest of the Raptors. Most of this slate is going to come down to getting the right Raptors and the right Pelicans, and I think that's what you should be trying to do. The guy who is going to start popping is Boucher, and I think that he's going to get a little bit of ownership because of his reputation. I didn't mention him before, but I would like to get to Boucher. Take Boucher versus Harrison Barnes. So straight up, Harrison Barnes would have to be 1,500 cheaper than Boucher for me to play him. He's more expensive on DraftKings than Boucher. And to give you an idea, Boucher can put up 50, especially if there's no Scotty Barnes. Now, I probably don't necessarily need Boucher to get to play anyway, but I'm okay with it. I actually feel better about that kind of a play than I do about the Harrison Barnes just play and pray for the best game he has all season for basically no reason other than that Fox has gone, and we've dealt with this situation before. It's just not how they run their offense anymore through him like they usually do. Also a guy who tends to usually be better at home, although he did have a nice game at Milwaukee the other day. But I mean, this guy has hit 40 fantasy points exactly one time since October. So we can't play a guy like that. In my opinion, on this kind of a slate where there's just too much goodness out there. Getting to any Temple. I went through all my Temple thoughts. Yes, I have some Temple. I don't think he's this incredible play, but I also think it's kind of been, people have talked off of him all day long on all the other shows. All the other touts have talked about not playing Temple so much that I actually think he ends up the lower owned of the bunch of all of them except for Najee Marshall. And because of that, I think that I'm going to have to try and force in some exposure. I'm playing that Satoransky ends up on the court later than he does, so maybe he's a better play. And I also can do some things out there. But I would, at some point, if Satoransky's going to have twice the ownership of Garrett Temple, which is what I'm looking at right now, probably should play Garrett Temple instead. Just my thoughts. But I do have, again, I like Satoransky. And my initial build had the Satoransky over Temple. But I was playing a narrative, and I actually thought that people would sort of just do their typical, I'm going to play 1,000,000% of the guy who starts all the time game, and they didn't do it. So, yeah. So I am very, very, very into to trying to find the right ones. Like I mentioned before, I need a starting lineup, so it's hard for me to prioritize them, and I'm going to get out of here pretty soon and try and see if I can dig a little bit. They should announce it at some point. I just would like it not to be 5 minutes before lock, because that'll make it very, very hard to adjust. Same thing with Scotty Barnes and see where he is. But we can find out if he's on the court warming up and all that. But if he's out, that game opens up a bunch of different things. They have other bodies, but you know how Nick Nurse does it. He likes to play all the guys' minutes. So that's sort of the way you're building your lineups today, is these guys. Sure, if you wanted to mix in a king, whether it be, they did announce their starting lineup, and it's Terrence Davis, who I think Halliburton and Terrence Davis are strong plays. I don't see anybody else on the Kings except for Rashawn Holmes being viable. And then you get into that question where you have to play this guy questioning his minutes, although he did play 28 the other day. And is he maybe the guy who's a better play than than uh, than Hernangomez if he starts? If Hernangomez doesn't start, yes, he's a better play. If Hernangomez does start, I would lean Hernangomez, but I love the pivot to try to get to some Holmes instead, and as I mentioned earlier, some Zubac. Yeah, you can play. You can play. Temple and Satoransky aren't not a natural match. Minutes that Satoransky gets will take away from Temple's minutes, but the idea thing is you try to play a narrative. Like if there's a blowout here, which a lot of people seem to think there is, and it seems like it. Like if there's a blowout, then you're going to play. Then Satoransky will get the later run than Temple. They're not going to play Temple a million minutes on a back to back. But so playing them together is probably not optimal. But is it wrong? No, you can play. I mean, I'm playing I think I'm playing at least 3 Pelicans on all my lineups. So I can't criticize that one. Oh, MJ. Okay, only going to play 2 Pelicans. Go for it. What are you going to do at the big man minutes though? Because you really think that anybody either of those big man minutes aren't going to get there against Embiid? Like they kind of have to play the minutes. So I don't know how that works. Like somebody's going to have to get there. And you get a little bit of a bonus if you play Hernangomez because he'll take Embiid outside sometimes. As I mentioned last week when Mo Bamba was the late sneaky play, you get a couple threes in there, and yeah, you're looking pretty good. Is Alexander, Hernangomez, Temple, and is Hernangomez, Temple, and Alexander Walker too much? No, absolutely not. I have that type of thing in a number of lineups. More news coming in. Nothing, not relative. David Ortiz, elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame. Very fair. Love David Ortiz. Good for him. Guys, I'm going to get out of here. If there's nothing else, I'm going to do some digging, and I will be in Discord as usual. We won't have as many late swap options as usual today because we have most of the games starting right at the 7 o'clock hour. But we appreciate you guys being here. Check out the bets, too, we've been doing. I mean, as you guys know, I hit the big parlay this weekend. But the NBA bets have mostly been good. The prop ones have been really good, but not, some of the overall ones are a little tough because I'm doing my bets in the morning, and then by the time, right before the game, you get 2 guys announced out, and it's totally a different situation. So let's crush it today, guys. Appreciate you all, and good luck to everybody out there. See you guys soon. One last thing. I will try to get my bets up for golf. I have some builds that I'll try to get to this evening because it's a 9 a.m. start tomorrow. They don't want to go against football on Sunday. But I will tell you that I will have some Patton Kizzire just because he keeps making me money and almost making me all the money, but not quite getting me all the way there. Appreciate you guys. Good luck to everybody, and let's crush it today.